Beneath the weight of marble and centuries of silence, there's a place where the air itself seems heavy with secrets. Imagine standing in a dim crypt, your footsteps echoing against the stone, when suddenly you feel a chill that doesn't belong to the living. In the stillness, you almost hear it, a faint scratching, a whisper of nails clawing against wood, a sound that should be impossible in the house of the dead. History holds stories too disturbing to dismiss as rumor, tales where truth is stranger than imagination. And one of those tales belongs to Spain, a nation of kings and queens, of splendor and ritual, where life and death were staged with the same ceremony. But hidden in this grandeur is a story that rattles the very idea of what it means to die. They said a queen had passed away, her body laid to rest with royal honors. Yet when her tomb was opened years later, what they found inside was not peaceful repose, but a nightmare that lingers even now. Death in royal Spain was not simply an ending. It was a spectacle, a performance staged for both God and the people. Every detail mattered. The cortege of candles, the gilded caskets, the carved stone tombs that seemed designed to defy time itself. To be born into royalty was to know that even in death, you would not vanish quietly. The Spanish crown poured wealth and attention into rituals of mourning, building crypts that spoke of power, permanence, and divine favor. Yet behind this splendor lay something more primal: fear. For centuries, the Spanish lived with a shadow at their side, the dread of slipping into the grave before the soul was ready to leave the body. Medical science was still crude, and what we now consider basic signs of life could easily be overlooked. Across Europe, whispers of premature burials haunted villages and courts alike, fueling superstitions and shaping customs. Families sometimes left bells above graves, strings tied to the wrists of the departed, just in case death had been mistaken. If ordinary people trembled at this possibility, imagine the terror within palaces where heirs carried the fate of nations. It was in this atmosphere of reverence and dread that one queen's story would unfold. She was young, admired for her beauty and charm, yet no amount of grace could shield her from the frailty of the human body. The queen's health began to falter in ways that frightened those closest to her. At first it was fatigue, then sudden weakness, bouts of fainting that left her attendants whispering in darkened corridors. Physicians were summoned, men draped in authority, but armed with little more than superstition and rudimentary tools. They peered, prodded, and speculated, yet their knowledge was a patchwork of guesses. In those days, the boundary between illness and death was terrifyingly thin. When she finally collapsed and failed to respond, the decision came swiftly. She was declared dead, her pulse undetected, her body already prepared for mourning. Candles were lit, prayers recited, and the palace descended into grief. But imagine the silence of that chamber when her eyes might still have held flickers of life, when breath so shallow escaped notice. Her body was dressed in regal finery, every detail meant to honor her passage, while outside the nation braced itself for the loss of a beloved figure. No one dared to question the physicians. Their verdict was final. Yet beneath the velvet, beneath the jewels, a question lingered like a ghost. Had death truly claimed her, or had human error sealed her fate too soon? The palace mourned with solemn ceremony, the weight of tradition guiding every step. Draped in velvet and jewels, the queen was placed in her coffin, her stillness taken as proof of her passing. The air was heavy with incense, prayers rose like smoke, and the sound of muffled weeping followed the slow procession toward the crypt. To the people of Spain, it was the end of a chapter. Their queen had been given to eternity with dignity. The coffin was sealed, lowered into its chamber, and the stone slabs slid into place. Silence reclaimed her. Years later, when the tomb was reopened, that silence gave way to horror. What should have been the peaceful repose of a sovereign had become a scene of unspeakable struggle. The lining of the coffin was torn to shreds, as if clawed from within. The once perfect fabric lay in tatters, the marks of desperation etched into its every fold. Her body was found twisted, contorted in ways that told a story no court chronicler dared to write openly. She had not been dead when the coffin was sealed. Her fingernails, broken and bloodied, bore witness to the nightmare of suffocating in darkness, of screaming where no one could hear. Imagine her final moments, heart pounding, air vanishing, every second a realization that the world above believed her gone. The dignity of her funeral became the stage for her torment. A queen buried alive, left to die not by fate, but by the fallibility of men who mistook silence for death. If stories like this grip you, if you find yourself leaning closer when history reveals its darkest corners, make sure you're subscribed. These forgotten truths deserve to be told, and together we can uncover more of the secrets that history tried to bury. The revelation of the Queen's fate spread quietly at first, whispered in corners of the palace where servants traded fragments of what they had heard. The royal court, bound by pride and ceremony, tried to keep the details contained, yet rumors travel faster than official decrees. Whispers became stories, and stories became warnings. Across Europe, the tale of Spain's queen who woke in her own grave unsettled both courts and villages alike. Was it incompetence by the physicians who declared her gone? Or was there something more deliberate, something cloaked in politics and power? The uncertainty made the story even more dangerous, because it planted doubt in everyone who heard it. If death could be mistaken for sleep, if even a queen could be abandoned to suffocate beneath stone, then what hope was there for ordinary people? Monarchs who once paraded their burials as displays of power now looked at their coffins with quiet dread. The Queen's tragedy had become more than a personal horror. It was a shadow that haunted every throne in Europe. The Queen's fate did not stand alone. It fit into a much wider terror that haunted Europe for centuries. To be buried alive was not just a nightmare whispered around firesides. It was a real possibility, and people knew it. Medical knowledge was crude, the line between life and death dangerously thin. Countless stories emerged of coffins opened too soon, of corpses found with twisted limbs and claw marks. Families, desperate to protect their loved ones, devised strange safeguards. Some tied strings to the wrists of the supposedly dead, the other end attached to a bell above the grave. Others demanded delays in burial, keeping bodies in their homes for days to ensure no final breath remained. The fear became so widespread that inventors created safety coffins, contraptions fitted with air tubes, escape hatches, even flags that could be raised from below. It is chilling to imagine that such precautions were born not from fantasy, but from experience. The Queen's story was the royal face of a common dread, a reminder that titles and crowns offered no protection against human error. In her tragedy, the private fears of countless families found a voice, echoing through every darkened crypt and churchyard. Her story lingers like a shadow, a reminder that even the most powerful can meet an end not written by fate, but by error, fear, and silence. The Queen who was honored in life and revered in death instead faced her last moments in terror, clawing at the coffin meant to preserve her dignity. It is tempting to imagine this as an isolated tragedy, yet the truth is far more unsettling. How many others shared her fate, their voices unheard, their stories lost to stone and soil? History does not always comfort us. Sometimes it unsettles, forcing us to confront the fragility of human knowledge and the mistakes that echo for centuries. If this story left you shaken, don't let it vanish here. Subscribe for more hidden histories. Share this with someone who thinks they know the past. And join me as we continue unearthing the horrors and mysteries that time tried to forget.